20s and 30s and 40s for a long time, one of the greatest players. And Lasker had been the world champion years before that. This game was played when Lasker was very old, and Alekhine was the world champion. And he won this game, Alekhine, very nicely. With similar ideas of an attack on G7. Okay, so these were two of the probably 5 or 6 greatest players ever. So it's a very instructive game. It was just a queen's pawn game. I'll just play through the opening moves quickly. Normal queen's pawn game. And Alekhine had white. Lasker had black. White just moves his knight here to avoid an exchange. He's just trying to keep pieces on the board as much as possible. So he plays knight to e4. Retreats 5 and 6. And the knight goes back to g3. We've seen this knight on g3 a lot because it can get to g7 2 different ways. Lasker plays e5. Already the knight hops up to f5, attacking the queen and pointing towards g7. Queen goes back. The other knight comes up to take d4. Black's knight goes up, bishop moves back. Now he gets the knight, but our other knight takes, so we still have a knight on f5. Queen comes out to b6. d6, knight e7, rook f to d1, rook a d8. Okay, finally white is ready to start attacking g7. So what move does white make now?
Knight h6?
No, not yet. We're not ready for sacrifice quite yet.
Okay.
Queen what?
Queen to g3.
Here we just play the move queen to g3. Okay, we're not, in this stage, when you're playing another great world champion, it's a little harder to do sacrifices and checkmates. It takes a little more setup time. So, you know, we're just going to first play queen g3, and now black is just going to play g6. The nice thing about these attacks on g7 is when you do make a play g6, it weakens 3 squares around the king. That's another. In Steve's game, we saw the attack could have come all around these 3 squares. Okay? When you're attacking h7 and he has to move something, it only has 2 weak squares. There's no square over here on this side of h. There's nothing over here. So it doesn't weaken quite as much. When you weaken this, it weakens a lot. Now it's different when there's a fianchetto and the bishop's here. We're talking about positions. Fianchetto requires a whole different kind of attack. So what I'm talking about here is positions where there's not a bishop fianchetto, and the pawns start back here. But if you can get here and force this, and there's no bishop back here, you have 3 weak squares that are all very dangerous for the black king. And so that's what we start with here. And what move could white play here? Again, it takes a little longer. And so the moves are more setup moves at this point, not direct knockouts.
Alright, rook d4?
Okay, it's a good idea, but we're going to save the rook for something else later. Because the rook lift won't do much quite yet.
h4.
What's that? Okay, we still have a pin, so we don't have to move a knight yet. And I would rather leave, it's better here than back on h4. So we're going to leave it up here for as long as we can.
Oh, pawn to h4.
Pawn to h4 is an idea. It's not what he played. At this point, the advance. I mean, he's still defending against. You're not quite ready to march the H pawn up the board in this situation. So there's something a little better that White can play. It's a setup move. It's not a knockout. It just it moves a piece closer to G7, and closer to the 3 weak squares.
Gotta be late H6.
Not yet. Not yet. It moves another piece closer to H6. There we go. Say it again. Queen to G5. Queen to G5. Like if this was a game between two of the greatest players ever, the moves are going to be harder to find. Okay? Because the easy moves, the other guy's not going to let him do. So just Queen to G5, just putting the pressure on here, and just he's ready to build up the pressure with the rook coming all the way to D6 next, putting pressure on this knight. Okay? But it's not a winning move yet, it's just building up the pressure. So now, Lasker decides he doesn't like this pin anymore with the knight here, so he slides his king over to H8. Okay? And now what ideas do you have for White? I'll give you a hint. Moving the king from here to here opened up another target of attack. Yeah.